And hello, thank you for being here for this episode of From Here to There. Tonight we have Mindy, who is Mindy Indy, and Mindy Steffen when I was with her. And as always, Stephanie Brown, who's going to be our interviewer this evening. So if you're just joining us, please feel free to drop questions into the chat at any time. And if you need closed captioning, please feel free to turn that on as well. And I am now going to just stop talking and turn everything over to Stephanie. So, Stephanie, take it away.
Thanks so much, John. And do you want to do the pinning thing for the recording?
You are pinned.
Oh, great. Perfect. All right. Nice to meet you again, Mindy. Super excited to have this conversation, and I think that it's going to be such a great bookmark to another great season of From Here to There. So we will dive right into it. Let us know what state are you from? Michigan?
Yeah, Livonia, Michigan.
Okay. And what years did you attend University of Michigan?
Okay, it was from 2002 to 2006.
Okay, and that was for undergrad, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. And just tell us a little bit about what brought you to University of Michigan. Was it because it was like your home state? Were you eyeing the stamps program? What were kind of your interests going into the program, would you say?
Well, it was a couple of different things. So my mom and my sister went there too, so it was like kind of familiar and it was like fairly close. And I only looked at other schools around Michigan. Like I didn't want to go too far from home. I looked at a couple of other schools, not going to name them, but I wasn't impressed with the artwork, but I was impressed with the artwork that like I saw like from the other students at U of M. And so, because I distinctly remember like thinking like, I don't want to go to a school where I do better artwork than the other students there. Like that might sound like kind of like weird or whatever, but it's like, I want to be challenged. Like I want to, I want to grow. Like I want to be like these students, yeah, I liked that U of M had a good like overall, like I could learn a lot of different things too. Like even though I mean at the time I was really like into painting and drawing and stuff, and I knew that I wanted to do comics and animation, so I wanted to do like many things. Yeah, it was a good choice.
So you came in already knowing that you were interested in doing comics and kind of dabbling into that animation world.
Yeah, like I always wanted to do comics in some form. I was, in high school, and it's funny because when I was home for Christmas, I came across these comic strips that I did for the school newspaper. So I was always kind of doing it on the side.
I love those full circle moments.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. All these years later, it's like I just found them like randomly, like under my bed or something. But
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's deep dive into your junior and senior year in particular. Where was your head at? Were you already thinking about what life was going to be like after graduation? Were you eyeing internships? Were you doing the complete opposite? How would you say you spent your junior and senior year?
Man, it was rough. Like junior year in particular, it was rough. Like art school was really hard for me that year. I remember I did a comic about like how depressed I was. Like, I think John Luther's in that comic actually. Like I seriously
consoling you. That would be like a very John character. Yes. Like you can do it. It's okay.
Yeah.
I will verify that yes, I am in this comic.
Yes. I need to find it somewhere. Yeah, but I mean, I got through it, but it was a hard year. I mean, I was doing a lot of things that I liked. but also like it was hard, like with deadlines but yeah, it was difficult, but you know, I was thinking more in the moment, not really like, mm, I guess it was harder to think of the future at that point.
Sure.
See,
Especially when that was already like, I can understand that when you're in a sense of overwhelm, where like you can't help but do anything but think about the present moment that you're in just because it's so much. So that's understandable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it was better senior year.
Okay. Were there any classes that stick out to you that you feel like you later had full circle moments with? You know, like after taking that class, like you think back on an experience that you had at that class that was really meaningful to you?
Mhm. Yeah, a couple different ones. I would say the most life-changing one for me was Joe Trumpy's class, where it was a field sketching trip. It was to Yellowstone National Park.
Wow.
So yeah, it changed my life. Like so like at the time, like we had to take a credit for either study abroad. And at that time, I remember I took Japanese and I was like, I want to go to Japan. But it was like, it's funny because my sensei kind of like discouraged it. She was like, oh, you're not. She was very blunt. She was like, oh, I don't think your grades. Like, I was really surprised that you passed. Like, but like, no, like, you know, that wasn't the path for me, and that was fine. And I tried it. So like maybe study abroad at that time wasn't like the best, but I'm really glad that I took Joe's class, and it just really helped not only like with drawing from life, like plants and nature and the field sketching part of it, but it was like helping me be more adventurous because I had an adventurous streak that I didn't realize.
Oh,
And
nice. You tapped into something new in yourself.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like it awakened my love of travel, you know? And you know, ever since, like I take a little sketchbook pretty much wherever I go, almost wherever I go. If it fits my purse, which usually it does. They have all sizes. But yeah, it got me into the habit of drawing from life, which is a really important skill, I think. Yeah, so that class, if Joe Trumpy is still there, like be sure to take one of his classes if you can.
Kudos, Joe. That's amazing. And also, I feel like you dropped a great little eggshell there about practicing drawing from life and making a habit of that and carrying a sketchbook around with you everywhere. I'm sure that's something that they've heard a lot, but doesn't hurt to hear it again.
Yeah.
All right. So into your senior year, do you remember what your final project was on?
Yeah, so I did an animation that was more of a hand-drawn animation,
Okay.
like, and I knew this at the time. I knew because, you know, Disney, I think they already phased out their 2D animation, but that's what I really liked. And I knew that like, this might be the only chance that I get to like dedicate, you know, just an amount of time where I can just work on a project. And I knew that I might not be able to like get a job in it afterwards, but I wanted to take that time for that passion. And so you can find my animation online somewhere. It's called Sammy, and
Okay.
it's so it's like traditional like cell animation. I like drew it. I made a light box. I just used like a cardboard box, and I put a
Nice.
light in it, and I had this like glass over it.
Mhm.
And so it was just like a light from like my parents' basement or something. Like I just like used that glass or whatever. It was, yeah, really cheap. And so I animated the character Sammy, which was like a little cute Venus flytrap creature.
Okay.
That it hatched out of an egg, and then it like went on adventures, like exploring the world. And it had like watercolor backgrounds, and he like lived in outer space on like this planet that looked like Saturn, and he like encountered these other creatures, and it was very cute. And my roommate at the time, she was in music school and she composed the score for it.
Oh, beautiful. Great collaboration.
Oh, it was great. It was so great. I was really glad that she had dedicated the time to it, actually, because it's kind of like a lot. So
amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So interesting question I have for you is thinking about that final project that you did with the animation of Sammy. How do you feel that aspects of that project, or maybe the project as a whole, has bled into the career you ended up leading or starting to lead?
Where I ended up leading?
Yeah, so like how did that final project kind of, what's your full circle moment with that, from that final project to you getting into your career with the creation of Sammy and working on all the elements of that comic, right? So from the bone drawings of it to the coloring of it, you know, piecing it together. I don't know if you printed any, or I'm sorry, it ended up being an animation. So like how you shared the video, that kind of thing, even doing the editing for it. Did any of those aspects, or did you experience any full circle moments from that experience?
Yeah, well, I used After Effects a lot, that program, which I still use, even though it was a number of years in between when I did the senior project too, because I had a couple unpaid animation internships in between time, and then I didn't do animation for a while. But actually, like in the past year, I've done a lot of animation, and so yeah, like that's come for
Come on back.
It was a total surprise too. Like, I mean, this is skipping forward a lot, but like, and it's funny because like over time, over that many years, because it's been like, I don't know, like 15 years or so since I graduated, the program hasn't changed like all that much. If you need to like learn something, you can just like Google it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, so the programs definitely I still use. The character Sammy is, I'm not, this is kind of like spoiler alert, but I have future plans for Sammy in Airhead, my comic, but this is
Okay.
like way future on, so like it's a little overlapped there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's interesting to, you know, we might bounce back and forth a bit, but I think it's interesting to see, especially for students who are listening and watching, you know, with the recording, just how those kind of moments overlap. I think it's very easy for us to think that, oh, this doesn't matter. Or sometimes, you know, we spend a lot of time on something and it does come back to benefit us in a different way later on. So, all right, let's go to graduation day. So what did you do after you graduated? Where'd you go?
So I stayed in Ann Arbor. Let's see, what was I doing at the time? I've done.
Were you on campus, living off campus?
I lived on campus, and so what happened was I had a job doing graphic design for someone in the ERC, the Engineering Resource Center. So that was a part-time job that I had still when I was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
It was only like 10 hours a week or something, but so I continued that. I subletted a place with some friends for that summer, and then, you know, I was applying to jobs, and then I lived in the co-ops, which was great. I love the co-ops, Mish Minis, yeah, it's the best. I'm sure the other co-ops are good too, but yeah, Mish Minis. Yeah, so that was great. And at the same time, I got a job at a full-time graphic design job in animation. Oh wait, but before that, I had an internship for, what was it called? It wasn't Bunko. Bunko was the one I had in New York. Geez, I'm gonna remember like after this.
That's okay.
Crack Media. It was Crack Media, an internship for the summer doing some After Effects stuff.
Was that local?
Yeah, it was in Ann Arbor. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that was good. That was a paid internship, so that was nice.
And what did you do in that role?
I did mainly Photoshop, character stuff, and a little bit of animating. Yeah, it was
What was the name of the role again?
just like animator. I don't even remember, honestly. It's been so
Okay.
long ago.
No, that's okay. So
Mhm.
I ask only because lots of students are interested in doing things with characters, and the blanket term they might use is like animator or character designer. But if you remember any, like what were some like nuts and bolts, like what was your day-to-day that you were doing? Because that can help them in their future job search, understanding that, okay, there's a role for someone who does this one specific thing.
So for that internship, I don't think I designed the characters, but they had it was kind of like the cutout animations like you can do in After Effects. So they had these elements and I was able to make them move in After Effects, as to what I recall. But yeah, I was only there for a couple months.
Okay.
And then I started my full-time job with the School of Education. So I was teaching, so School of Education teaches people to be teachers. And
Right.
so I was doing a mix of graphic design and also at the time it was Flash animation. So it wasn't After Effects, but it was a lot in Flash. And I was doing some cartooning stuff and I did like a lot of posters and I did like website stuff. The main title was graphic designer for that, and I was there for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah, that it was great to have a full-time job.
I'm
to
sure.
have that experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did any point, what attracted you to that role? Do you feel like you were at the point where you're just like, hey, I want to stay in Ann Arbor and there's this full-time opportunity? Did you see that having this role might be a good stepping stone for you? What was kind of your thought process in accepting that role?
Yeah, like, so I applied, I think internally at first for some jobs and, locally, because at the time, yeah, I still want to stay like local, I grew over time to be more outgoing, but I was definitely not this outgoing. Like, I want to move to New York. Like that came way later. It had, since the field sketching adventure, like it took me a while to like grow to be like more and more adventurous and to like visit
Sure.
other cities and like realize that I liked that, like before like moving eventually. But back, at the time, I honestly did not apply to that many jobs before I had this interview and I think a few other ones. But the ones for the university, like I actually got like interviews with because it was hard to like get interviews like elsewhere or something, but it's nice. Yeah, I would recommend like applying for university jobs. Like they're really good and they they had some kind of like matching thing too, where they like saving for retirement and stuff. They had a good matching program. I don't know how good it is now. So
Nice.
I don't know, but at least early on, I got to save a lot early on. So that really helped.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I asked that just because, again, I think that there's a lot of pressure sometimes for students to like get out and go, be adventurous and do the big thing. And I think your example and also a couple, like even our last example we had with Andre is a great example of just what's possible. Maybe taking on something that isn't as glamorous or is not what you saw, but like has a lot of value, like that's a really great role that you had. And it's a great application of your skills in a different sense, right? And I think that sometimes there can be a lot of pressure that there's only one way you can utilize your skill set. So it's nice to see that kind of broadened. So you were there for 4 years. What brought you to transition from there?
Yeah, so I had wanted to move 2 years in, but then that was 2008. And so that was like the crisis of 2008, like the crash and everything. And so I distinctly remembered talking to one of my coworkers, kind of like just on the down low, being like, hey, like like, I want to move to New York because like I had visited New York. I think it was through Arts at Michigan at first. And they did like little bus trips. I don't know if they still do that or if that organization still exists. But at the time they did. I went to Chicago, I went to New York, and so after that, like
Were those trips that you took with other students or alums?
Yeah, this was other students and alums. I think like when I went to Chicago, I was still a student.
Okay.
I think maybe, but when I went to New York, I had definitely just graduated, and they still allowed like alums to go, like, so I wasn't like, crashing it or whatever. But I'm really glad that I got to go, because like it was a great opportunity, and I discovered I really liked New York, and I wanted to live there at some point. And I traveled with a friend, like, so me and a friend from college, we would each New Year's, we would go and like visit a different city. And like I discovered that even more so, that like how much I like New York, and I started to explore like opportunities there. Like, could I live here? Could I go and make this happen? And so actually for 2 years, I was applying to jobs in New York, and I thought that I would get a similar graphic design job. So that's what I was really going for at the time. Even though I knew that I wanted to do cartooning and animation, I thought that it was more practical to kind of like, like
make a lateral shift.
Yeah. So, because I knew that New York was a great place. It has a great comics history. And they still, even though California is the bigger place for animation, New York still has a lot of small independent studios. They do commercials and stuff. And so I was like, okay, it seems like a good place, And yeah, I mean, it took a while before I finally made the leap. And it was actually through like a mutual friend of of my New Year's Eve friends that I got to, like, she was moving with her roommate from Manhattan to Brooklyn. They needed a third roommate. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was kind of like I knew someone. Well, I had met her once, like in person, and so I was like, all right, like it was a good time to go, because at that time, like the job at U of M, like they were gonna kind of downsize anyway from my full-time job to a part-time job, and
oh, nice.
Yeah, so this was in spring of 2010. And so I'm like, okay, like this is the time. It's not like, if I don't move now, like when am I going to move? And so like, Then I was like, okay, this is a good time to transition. And so, yeah, like I feel like it would have been harder to move if I didn't like at least tangentially like know someone or had like an opportunity. Cause like the apartment is the hardest part. I would say, like not even like the hardest, but it's like, it's a number of things. But yeah, I moved there without a job. Like I moved there, like I saved up a lot, and I had a place.
Well, you knew that you wanted to go, for those 2 years. So you had that in mind. And when you were going on trips just to visit, were you scoping out kind of like cost of living and that kind of thing? So you knew like how much did I need to save, what a plane ticket might be, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So actually, so there was a couple things. I did meet with a financial advisor at a credit union. I think it was either U of M Credit Union or DFCU Financial. I don't remember which one it was, but credit unions are great. And I sat down and we did go through like the nitty gritty of what it would be, like
nice,
how many months, like what would be like the average cost of living for like everything for like 1 month, and then like kind of like times it out, like, okay, this is how much money you would need to save. And
I love it.
I did like a test run actually, because I'm a very cautious person. So I did a test run like the last New Year's Eve of like what, it was 2009 going into 2010. Me and my friend went there to New York for New Year's Eve, and then she stayed for a week, but I stayed for a month subletting somewhere just to see if I could really do it. If I could live there. Yeah.
Great idea.
And I was going to like networking events. I was trying to get to know people. I was doing informational interviews. I was just like scoping it out and like seeing what the comics community there was like. Yeah, kind of like setting myself up for like.
How'd you get connected during that month? Like, did you preemptively connect? Did you just do some Google searching once you got there? Like, how did you find that comics community for that month that you were visiting? And, you know, how did you find the events to go to?
So I think at the time, and it's funny, like looking back, the internet was really different back then. So like social media was not like how it is today. Like it's weird. I remember different stages of the internet, which is like makes me feel old, but I did Google it. It's hard to say like exactly. I know like the different networking things. At the end of the day, the networking things, like the random ones, like at random bars, like I don't think they like really amounted to much, but I did meet some friends through there, which was nice. But honestly, it's a lot of people that are out of work trying to get jobs from each other, which doesn't really work, but it's like, oh, you might know some. I knew like when I moved here, I had jumped in volunteering with Mocha, and from there, that really led to a lot of things. It led to me teaching, because I gave like the museum tours, and then like they needed someone to like fill in teaching for the other cartoonists sometimes. Like they would bring in groups, and I would teach like basic comics lessons, like how to draw a character and like put that character in a 3-panel comic. And see, it led to that. It led to me doing custom comics because someone had asked, just like a random person came into the museum asking if anyone did custom comics there. And so, yeah, that got me on doing the custom comics, which is basically like drawing average people in a comic. Like they would pay me to draw them in like a cute little comic. It could be someone's for someone's birthday or like an anniversary. Like those are the two main like subjects. But so yeah, and then it also led to me doing coloring work, which was really great. I did various coloring works, ghosting for one of the big two. The big two is Marvel and DC. And yeah, so I was an assistant, this one guy doing coloring work for him for about a year. That was the first year that I was in New York. So that was very good. I learned a lot. I was mainly doing Photoshop. I went to his studio, and he was drawing the pages and I was coloring them. And yeah.
Were you hand coloring or digital coloring?
It was digital, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Photoshop. Yeah, so yeah, you know, it's, I mean, I could go on and on, you know, about I mean, I feel like I've done so much over the.
How'd you transition from that year of being the assistant? What did you do next?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was a lot of things at once, because it wasn't like, that job was not a full-time job.
Sure.
And so it was hard, and I want to talk about this to educate the students about it, but it is like still kind of like hard and awkward for me to like talk about this part, like being an assistant for this guy. Like I did not have a contract with him, but I was like working on like the coloring stuff, which I got paid for, but I was also working on this other stuff, like an animation project on the side, some other of his like personal comics, like coloring work and some other gigs. And while I was getting paid for the big two stuff, I was not getting paid for the other stuff, but it felt like I was getting paid because I was going into his office and I was doing this work, but it was the kind of thing where it's like, when the big two stuff ended, because the series eventually ended, then it's like, well, I was doing this other stuff, but unfortunately he ran into some financial hardships and was unable to pay me. And so then we had to part ways, and yeah, always have a contract. And I've been obsessed with contracts after then. So, you know, if the one thing that, you know, you guys take away from this is always have a contract. And I still, even today, like I go over the wording of my contracts, like with each one I do, to try to make it more clear. And just so like both parties are on the same page, you know, like what are the expectations of both the client and like the client's expectations and my expectations. And yeah, it's a whole thing. But you know what, like I'm really glad that I became obsessed with making sure that I have good contracts. And yeah, so like after that, I mean, I was still working in an art supply store like this whole time, like kind of like on the side. And so I just kind of like started from square one again. Like I was working in an art supply store, I was doing freelancing, and I started to, yeah, I was doing some other coloring. I colored for paper cuts. I colored Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Yeah, that was cool. That was before they got acquired by Boom. So that was, yeah, a while ago. I think it was like 2011 or 2012. But yeah, I also did some coloring work for them on Thea Stilton. And so that was nice. But yeah, I was exhibiting in Comic Cons, large and small, during this time as well. So that got me, I had my own little mini comics, which some are on my website. I should have brought some. I don't have any with me right now because I was like, oh, I could like show you, but no.
You'll have to drop a link in the chat when we're done.
Sure, yes. So yeah, I did that, and I started sketching, like sketching on the spot of like portraits and pets and characters and stuff like, oh, draw my kid is Batman, you know, like that's very popular. And so yeah, I exhibited in a lot of smaller conventions in Jersey. I eventually got to get into New York Comic Con and Mocha Fest, and a lot of other ones. The biggest one I did was San Diego Comic Con.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Can you speak to, I think that tabling is a really great, I've shared this before for our frequent viewers. My husband's a comic book artist, and tabling such a big asset and tool to like really grow your audience. And can you talk a little bit more about like what's the expense behind that? Like, does it cost you money every time? Are there application processes? You know, how might someone get into tabling? And then how did you kind of scale through that?
Yeah, so I would say start small. Like you could start at local conventions and then like branch out. Like even Motor City Comic Con has an application process. I've exhibited there before as well. So yeah, for the smaller conventions, you might not have that big of a application process or even at all. But yeah, sometimes like what they would have them at like the YMCA or other like local like halls or something. And yeah, but like for the big ones, like yeah, Baltimore and Chicago C2E2, all those ones, you
Love
have to
C2E2.
apply. You have to apply like 6 months in advance. Get on their mailing list because I think that they'll send emails about like when it's time to apply and stuff. Yeah, it's expensive. Like New York Comic Con, full disclosure, it's like $500 for a table. And so even splitting with someone, and I've split every year that I exhibit with someone, that's still $250 each. And there's a lot of people at New York Comic Con. So they have like the flow. And with doing sketches, yes, I could make a lot of money. Like I made that back and then some. But now I'm kind of transitioning honestly to now that I have my books out. So I do have this. Airhead, yes, it's out.
Nice.
It's a physical book. So like these I sell for like $10 each.
Beautiful.
So thanks. But yeah, it's like you would have to sell a lot to make back a $250
Table fee.
and that's just breaking even.
Yeah.
And so actually I've made a choice to like not do the bigger conventions now. Like I feel like I've kind of like been there, done that. Not saying I'm ruling it out in the future, but like I feel like it was fun and nice doing the kind of sketch art, but I want to do like the more polished art, like what's in here, like, watercolor backgrounds, like the
Nice.
characters and stuff. Like I want to do more stuff like that rather than a quick sketch. Like not that that's bad, but I just feel like honestly, like I got to a point where, okay, I when I was only doing those drawings for like $20, I got a lot of commissions, but like when I try to raise my prices, then I got fewer, which that makes sense. Okay, so I'll do fewer, but then I'll get more money. But then I feel like I hit a ceiling and that people would not pay at a convention like $50 for like a one figure like color drawing. I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe it's my style or whatever, but I feel like, okay, maybe it's time to move on. I don't want to lower my price. That's going backwards. I just want to do something different.
Right. So for all of you, please feel free to drop questions in the chat that you might have for Mindy. We're going to save the last bit of time for that. So like about the last 10 minutes for questions, but definitely going to soak up these next 9 minutes, Mindy. And if you can tell me about what are some ways that you built up your audience. I know that you have a Patreon, and your beautiful book that you just showed us is a new release. Tell us a little bit about, if you can kind of merge those stories together, like what gave you the courage to finally be like, all right, you know what, I'm going to do my own comic, I'm ready to do my own thing. And what was your process leading into that?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff. Okay, so the building my audience is separate from the when I decided I wanted to do my own comics. So like,
okay,
I'll start with the comic idea first. I had this comic idea for Airhead in college. It was originally called Aries the Dreamer, and I had a Phoebe Glockner's class, and I did, let's say, a first draft of what eventually became Airhead with a few of the main characters and stuff. But yeah, like I set the story aside for years, but then I wanted to pick it back up, and I started kind of I'd taken some continuing education classes at SVA the first year I moved to New York. And one was starting a blog. And that kind of like helped me like build my following for my blog. And that was about Airhead, like about my process, about like how I created Airhead and stuff at the time. And then I also took, I think, figure drawing for graphic novelists. Yeah, so I got better in my figure drawing. But yeah, like the story of how I came to do Airhead is just, it's not linear at all. Like it's like I worked on it for a while, and then I set it aside for years, and I was doing all this other stuff in New York, and then I was like, no. At one point, I remembered, because I was doing these other mini comics and stuff, and I was like, spending time on these other short stories is taking away time from my more epic story. You know, we all have those epic stories you want to do.
Yeah,
like a lot of us do, which is why, you know, we're inspired by anime and manga and stuff, is, you know, and so we want to do that epic one. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to focus on one thing, it's going to be Airhead. One thing before I die is going to be, I want to do the Airhead story. And so then I had like a renewed vigor. I was like, yes, I want to try to formulate how to do this story. And yeah, it was a struggle, because I was drawing it at first, but then like I wanted to like change the story after I had like set it aside for a while. So I like scrapped a lot of it, and I started from scratch. And it was actually like I was teaching at Harlem Children's Zone. So this kind of like comes back, like I taught for like over 2 years at Harlem Children's Zone. I was teaching, it was grade school through high school. I was teaching them how to do their comics. And on the side, my supervisor, who was really awesome, he was like, yeah, you need to be working on your own stuff more as well, and like to show them as examples. I'm like, that's absolutely right. That's an awesome idea. And so like I was like showing them like these like character like expression charts that I did of like the characters, and like some of the covers and stuff, like I'd shown them. And yeah, so that kind of like got me like kind of like boosted, like with renewed energy for Airhead. And then so HCZ had closed my site. They have different sites throughout Harlem, and my site had closed for various reasons, but I could have transferred to another site, but I wanted to use that opportunity to do something different and to launch my Patreon. Like, I feel like I do something for 2 years, and then I'm like, no, I want to do something different. Like this has been a pattern, like, for me. And so I launched my Patreon, which was really great. I had already built up a network from exhibiting in Comic Cons. I had a mailing list, which is tied to my blog. I was blogging regularly on my website. So I had a sign-up sheet when I would exhibit in any Comic Con, large or small, and I was growing my mailing list at the time. It was just through FeedBurner, which doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist anymore because like Google kind of like decommissioned it. But like recently through the comics launch course, I had yeah, everyone needs to like Google Comics launch, because I learned a lot just from their podcast. So it's really nice. It's a really great comics focused, great Kickstarter focused thing to learn. And so I started over with MailChimp for my mailing list, which yeah, if anyone wants more freelance tips, signed up for you know, what is it? bit.ly/Mindy list. I think that's it. So yeah, get my mailing list, you'll get freelance tips and stuff. But yeah, so like I have my mailing list, I had my Patreon, and yeah, like Patreon didn't even exist when I was in college. Like, you guys are so fortunate to have resources like Patreon that you can do it, you know, like stuff like this did not exist. I think Kickstarter was just coming out. Like Facebook was just coming out when I graduated. So like the whole internet landscape is totally different. But yeah, like me doing a Patreon first really helped me to like understand how to launch a successful Kickstarter. Because it was very similar, and Patreon was a very like low key, low pressure way of kind of preparing for the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is intense. Like it is no joke, like because it's on a time limit, but the Patreon is kind of ongoing. That's not a time limit. So, but yeah, like, I mean, there's so much I could say. Like for my Patreon, I was doing it for my long form series of Airhead, which a lot of cartoonists that are on Patreon, they are web cartoonists. But I didn't let that deter me, because I was like, no, I can make a way to figure out how to raise money. I can formulate the tiers in a way that it can work. So I set it up in a way that there's a free tier, which is usually a video update of like me like talking and stuff. And then there's the so for Airhead, it's about like this guy Air, he sees the future in his dreams. And so there's a see the present tier, which is me working on the current issue. And then there's the see the future tier, which is like seeing the next issue. So I'm working on the current issue and then the next issue simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there are other tiers after that, but those are the main ones. But
amazing.
Yeah. So like I had a goal to like in the first month, if I raised $100, I would take my first surfing lesson, which so like Airhead is a surfer as well. So that's like part of it. And so yeah, I did. I reached that goal and I took my first surfing lesson, which was amazing. Like it was such an accomplishment. Like it was like, it felt like very like daring, and it was hard. It was hard to do, you know, it's a physical sport, you know, like it's an extreme sport. So, but yeah, like, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of like on a tangent here, like, but.
No, you're good. I am just going to encourage and reiterate, please interrupt us, you know, drop your questions in the chat if you have any of them. I've got plenty more questions that I'm happy to ask Mindy, but also would love to get any of your specific questions answered by Mindy while they're there. So tell me a little bit about seeing your present right now. Like, what is your present right now? You know, what's the present with Airhead? What's the present with your working situation as well?
Yeah, so I'm in a very good point in life right now. Like Airhead just came out. I fulfilled the Kickstarter. I sent it out to all the backers. I had an awesome release party. And yeah, now I'm selling it on my website and also at, you know, any shows I'll do in the future. Right now here I am in this awesome studio space, which is, I'm part of a residency, which it's called Transform. It's a Christian artist residency. And so I'm here for 4 months. The 4-month residencies for New Yorkers that are already here, but they do have a year-long residency for people that are out of town if you want to apply. Yeah, so it's really good. Like it's such a blessing, honestly, because it's not only like, okay, yeah, I was working from home this whole time. Like I was working from home before it was cool, like, you know, and the pandemic and stuff. It's like, all right, like I'll just, you know, continue like working from home and stuff. But, you know, I also didn't move to New York just to be in my apartment all the time. And so definitely was weary from apartment fatigue from like, you know, the pandemic. And so I'm really glad that I got this residency. I do have a bit of a commute though, but it's really great to be around other artists. One of my studio mates was in earlier today. I share the studio with 2 other girls, and yeah, it's within a larger like the whole floor of this like warehouse is artists. And so like I see them like in the common areas and stuff, and oh, it's really nice. And what else? Yeah, I
I
still
do
do
have a
graphic
question
design.
here from
Oh,
Elaine. I'm
sure.
just going to squeeze that in real quick.
Sure.
Can you talk more about the pros and cons of working at a big company like Marvel and DC? And I know that you were working on that by way of your assistant job. So yeah, they're asking about the pros and cons of doing that kind of work versus being an artist. And do you publish your comics, which you partially just already answered.
I think that it's good to know both ends of it. And yeah, like I was technically like ghosting as an assistant, so like I was not like technically credited in print for uh the Marvel stuff I did, but um it was, I mean, it paid really well for what it did. And also I got creds, like I got to say like, yes, I'm working on this. I went with the guy that I was an assistant for, like, like that was good networking to say like I was his assistant and stuff. And so that was good. Like the name recognition is good for working on the bigger projects. Um, so for doing my own stuff, I feel a sense of fulfillment, a sense of like personal goals being accomplished, and that this is an idea that I've had for a really long time, and it's been really hard to formulate that idea and from like to get it out of my head and like into the world. It really takes a lot of effort, um especially because I'm such a perfectionist like that. It's hard, but you know I would say like it's good to know like both aspects. And like even if you don't get to work for the big two or like a big company, um you can still make a very good living with, like, if you choose to have a full-time job and do cartooning on the side, because I did that for a while, you know and it's okay if it takes a couple years or maybe more than a couple of years. And like Airhead took like a ridiculous amount of time. Like it probably shouldn't have taken that long, but like I wanted to, like, I don't know, I just like wanted to go and do a bunch of stuff. Like I wanted to not only try a bunch of different things with my career, but I wanted to like go and explore like the fun and the joys of living in a city like New York. And like it is what it is. But with all the career stuff, it's good to enjoy life too, like responsibly,
Absolutely.
of course, but
Well, I'm
enjoy
actually
your
going to
20s.
jump in here because there's a piece of this that I can actually comment on as somebody who contributed to Mindy during the production of Airhead. And what I want to reflect on that maybe students could really benefit from is that her work on this comic is more than you actually see in the comic. She explored all of these offshoots and ideas that didn't make it into the final product, and she would share what she was creating on a monthly basis. And there was a whole series of just facial expressions that she created. So what you see in the final product is not all of the work that actually went into creating it. And the other thing that I loved about being with Mindy on this journey was when she would in fact take time away from working on the comic, and she would say, work is piling up. She had all these other side gigs that were going on, and work is piling up, and I'm so sorry I haven't been able to produce anything new for you guys. And again, I'm not privileged for the most part for experiencing how a comic artist works. And I got to, even on the fringe, learn so much just by being part of the process. And I encourage any of the students who want to go into this particular field is to not just stay in touch with Mindy, but other comic artists that you love and learn that their processes are all different. There's no right way to do any of this. And Steffi knows this because she's married to somebody who does this. And it's really fascinating, you know, as much as you can, contact people who do this. And Mindy, I'm volunteering you, obviously.
I accept. Hey, yeah, I love talking about what I do, you know, so.
Yeah. And normally Stephanie does this toward the end, but I'm just going to jump right in. Mindy, what is the best way for people to reach you?
Yes, so yeah, just shoot me an email at mindyindy.com. So that's Mindy with a Y. So Mindy at Mindy again, and then Indy also with Y.com. Yeah. Here. Yeah. Yes. Oh, just like this. Mindy Indy. I don't know if you said that.
Good job.
um, I want to just thank Mindy so much for being with us tonight. Uh, I cannot tell you what a joy it is to see you again. Stephanie, as always, you are amazing in terms of you
My
know,
pleasure.
getting this off the ground and doing this continually. Students, thank you so much for being here. Are there any last questions? Feel free to either put them in the chat or do a hand raise before we head out tonight. Nope, we're
All
good.
right.
All right.
Well, now you all know how to reach out to Mindy, so please do not be shy. This is your sign. This is your magic balloon unicorn. Like this is your time, you know, reach out, make a connection, even if it's just to say thank you or hi or a follow, you know, on her mailing list or anywhere else online. Definitely utilize this opportunity. And thank you all so much for having me and hanging out with us every other day or so, every other week or so with From Here to There. It's a pleasure to interview everyone and, you know, get these stories out and help you all learn from them.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Stephanie. Thank you, John.